radio for the masses.
Headline edition, July 8, 1947. The Army Air Forces has announced that a flying disc has been found and is now in the possession of the Army.
If the game is rigged, change the game. Game changer.
I occasionally think how quickly our differences worldwide would vanish if we were facing an alien threat from outside this world.
This is Fade to Black with your host, Jimmy Church, on the Game Changer Radio Network.
All right. Well. Good evening, Fade to Black. How you doing? Today's Wednesday, October 22nd, 2025. Let's do this, man. Yeah, I'm your host, Jimmy Church. It's Halloween. It is, this is my... Is it wrong to say that Halloween's my favorite holiday? Does it outwax Thanksgiving, right? Christmas, Halloween, but they're all stacked up. And I know that I'm here because I go through my birthday, which is at the beginning of October. And it just it doesn't stop for me personally until the new year comes in, because it's just fantastic, right? Christmas, New Year's, Halloween, and that's where we're at. We're in Halloween week, and this week on Fade to Black, well, tonight we're going to be talking about poltergeist, and how do I say this? Every time I do a show, which is once a week, on ghosts, the paranormal, life after death, hauntings, poltergeist. We do it, and something happens. Something happens in this haunted house of mine. Something will happen in here. Something is going to go down. And now, we're doing a show on poltergeist. Something is going to happen. And I want it to happen. That's the other thing. I'm manifesting this, man. I'm manifesting it. So we'll see what happens tonight on the show. This week on Fade to Black, Monday night, great conversation with Les Velez, alien abductions. Last night, Trey Hudson was here talking about his work out at the Meadow and the Meadow Project and his new documentary, The Helm and Lens. Tonight, John Kruth is here. We're talking about poltergeist tonight. Tomorrow night, because it's Halloween, we are off air. Yeah, I'm attending a friend's Halloween party. Yeah, costume party, dinner party. It's going to be a lot of fun. And I've already I shouldn't have said, I should have just done it. Everybody's expecting it. I'm going as Dead Elvis. Yeah. I'm going to leave that right there. You'll see the pictures when we're done. All right. Let's move on. I've got 7 events coming up in 2026 in combination with everything that I do around here. First up is the Conscious Life Expo, February 20th through the 23rd at the LAX Hilton. Right after that, the Sedona Ascension Retreat. That is March 20th through the 22nd in Sedona, Arizona. After that, the Contact Modalities Expo, May 1st through the 3rd in Delavan, Wisconsin. After that, Contact in the Desert, May 28th through June 1st. Tickets on sale this Thanksgiving Day. After that, I go to Peru for the Inca Celebration of the Sun with Brian Forrester. That is June 23rd through July 1st. After that, the Monty Python Tour of Scotland over in Scotland in the UK, August 1st through the 9th. After that, I come back and head back to Peru and Easter Island with Brian Forrester. All of the links for everything that I am doing is in the description below. Okay? And we have it on social media and all that stuff. All right. Yeah, let's get this cracking. I'm ready. And so tonight, what is a poltergeist? Yeah, it's pretty much what I've called the show, which will allow us to go into any direction that we need to. He's got a 21st century poltergeist study. We're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about his investigations, the science of parapsychology at the Rhine Research Center. What is that? We're going to be talking about that because he is the executive director. And he's also the co-founder and education director of the Rhine Education Center. The links for those are below. All right. He has 20 plus years of professional technology experience and 15 plus years as a professional researcher. And all of this allows me to get inside of John's head and find out what's going on. I would like to welcome to the first time to Fade to Black, John Kruth. He's right there. John, good evening.
Hi, Jimmy. Hey, it's great to see you again. You know, last time I saw you, I think you were on stage revving up the crowd at Sci Games International.
Did I do good?
Yeah, oh man, you had everyone jumping in that place. You kept it going the whole time.
It's all a blur now. It's all a blur. Yeah, that was a great event. I enjoy what I do. You know, what the funny thing is? People, the audience and the producers of these events, they know what they get with me. Yeah, I don't have to impersonate somebody, or you know what I mean? That's what they expect, and I just get to be me and have fun. Sometimes I say some things that later I go, did I say that? Really? But it's all in good fun, and that was a great event. It was a great event. It was great talking to you too as well, and meeting you.
Yeah, that was a fun place to be. And you talk about Halloween. And, one of the best things about Halloween is you get to let your inner self just show up. So you talk about you don't have to hide who you are, but every once in a while, you just got to let that little bit more out. And I can see you got a little bit of dead Elvis hiding in there.
I do. I do.
Strong tomorrow.
When I put on the costume, I'll shave the goatee and put the glasses on and my taking care of business necklace, and stuff. And you can't help but, the next thing I just like, man, I feel like a banana and peanut butter sandwich. This is, it just comes out. And you're right. It is so fun to do that on Halloween. And the other part about Halloween, seriously, handing out candy and looking at the kids, because I know what it meant to all of us growing up, right? That was a big deal. The best candy, man, is over on D Court, whatever it was, right? And it was so much fun. And we just look, and it's no different with kids today. They are just as into it as you and I were, and we think that we were the kings of it. No, man, they got it down. And looking at the costumes and the fun, and then look at their parents behind them and how they are glowing because they're out with their kids. It's just an extraordinary night. The other day, it was Saturday. I have a little town next to me. I live in the desert, and there's this little desert town called Quartz Hill. All right, a couple blocks away, and it's very small. It's one main street that's like 4 blocks long, but very, very, it's a town. It's very cool. It's very nice. And they had all the businesses there do a Halloween thing. So I'm driving through, I'm on my Harley, right, rolling through town, my 4 blocks of greatness that I get to just cruise through town. And I'm looking, and there were just hundreds and hundreds of kids on both sides of the street with their families going up and down this 4-block section, visiting all of the businesses, man. And I just rolled that thing down and slowed down and enjoyed the moment. Man, I love this country. Man, it was so America. You know what I mean? All the bullshit is put to the side, and here we just have families on the street trick-or-treating at the local businesses. That's rock and roll, man. It was great.
And I'll bet you're one of those guys who gives out the full-size candy bars too, aren't you?
Oh man, I don't play. I don't play. My favorite thing to do, then we'll get on to poltergeist. My favorite thing to do is you got to get like the 3-year-old little boy, 3-year-old little girl that really doesn't understand what's going on. They're getting free candy, right? And they're holding up, and this magic happens, right? That stuff. And you take them and you just give them the cauldron. Take what you want. What? I can? And they're waiting for their mom to say no, right? I can do that. Take more. What? Okay, all right. Oh man, I love Halloween. Let's get into this poltergeist thing. I'm going to start here, and I know that the chat is expecting me to go into my haunted house stuff, and I'll try to avoid it, but it's impossible not to. My house is so messed up that I'm bored with poltergeist. How crazy is that? Where I just like whatever, it's like that. But poltergeist or poltergeist is my version of what I think a poltergeist is even correct. What is a poltergeist?
Well, it sounds like you're talking about there's things that move around or fall off the walls or move, things that happen in your house, maybe loud noises. Do you ever get like water appearing in weird places or anything like that?
This morning.
No kidding.
Yeah.
See, that's one of the more rare things that you see in poltergeist cases. But we hear about all these other things happening where people have objects moving and nobody's touching them. No one's anywhere near them. But there's also, and it's really rare, that you might see people actually being bruised or scratched or something. And this has happened right in front of people who've been researchers who've been there watching people while this happening. So this is the phenomena that we're talking about when we're talking about poltergeists. Usually it's around a specific location, but it's also often around an individual, a specific person that's in this place. It was always this idea, the idea of poltergeist. It's a German term. Mm-hmm. Polter means noise or loud or boisterous, and geist is ghost. So it was kind of a noisy spirit. That's how the term originally came about. But back in the 1950s, oh geez, how long ago was that now? Like in 70 years ago now, mm-hmm. there was this activity that was going on. Well, actually, it was even before that. There was some activity that was going on in near Washington, D.C., just outside of it in Maryland. And there was this little boy who was having all this activity going on in his house. His parents were really freaked out because they were hearing these loud noises. The kids seemed to have bruises on them and scratches on them, and they didn't know really what was happening. So they contacted J.B. Rhine at the Rhine Research Center because, well, hey, this is where paranormal or parapsychology was studied seriously. They were looking for serious scientists to figure out what's wrong with our little boy. And so they sent JB talked to them a bit and talked to some of the people who were there. And it turns out there were Jesuit priests that were there who were exploring this phenomena, thinking that maybe this was something demonic, something that spirits were there, and they needed to be really, really careful before they made an assessment that they needed to do an exorcism or something like this. J.B. Rhine heard all the phenomena they were describing, and he said, you know what? This doesn't sound like it's something spiritual or demonic. It sounds like this little boy is really upset. And it sounds like it might be what we call poltergeist phenomena, the same sort of things that we were talking about before that you see happening in your house. These were happening with this little boy as well. Well, that was in the late 40s. It turns out that this was the case that the film The Exorcist was based on later. And so the Jesuit priests being involved in going through an exorcism, J.B. Rhine warned them, don't talk about it as if it's a religious thing, because that will feed the family's fears. And the fear is what makes this occur more than anything else. And so when you talk about, I want these things to happen, you are kind of manifesting these poltergeist phenomena. So
okay, well, I want clarification.
Okay,
this is for me to learn. Okay, are you suggesting? So I'm understanding you correctly. Your research shows that a poltergeist, in today's definition, would involve contact, scratches, something like that. A picture falling off the wall is not poltergeist. Am I understanding you?
No. I misstated then maybe. What it is a poltergeist is the phenomena that we're looking at.
Okay,
Anything that's
I feel better. Okay.
Yeah.
I just want to make sure that I'm experiencing poltergeist stuff. Or for me to experience the real poltergeist stuff, I've got to have a demon claw across my back.
No.
I don't need that. Okay.
No, you don't need Jesuit priests around to clear your house or anything like that. No, poltergeist phenomena it's a term that originated because people thought it was a ghost. But back in 1958, a few years later, there was another case that happened in New York, in a place called Seaford, New York. And what happened was this little boy in his house, his family in his house started to have all these weird things happen where they saw bottles that had screw tops on them, and the screw top would come off the bottle and it would knock over and it'd be spilled on the ground. They had objects that seemed to be flying off the wall. They even had the babysitter said she saw a piece of furniture flip over while she was watching the kids. Well, they didn't know what to do. So the first thing they did is they called the police. And what was really, really great about this case is that the police officer who came in and investigated kept really good notes of everything that was going on, everything that was reported, and all the different tactics they took to try to figure out what it was. So it was really well documented. They started calling people like plumbers to see if the noises that they were hearing were from pipes in the walls. They called carpenters to see if it was something that was related to the foundation of the building shifting or something. Electricians. They called the phone company. Everybody. They had everyone in the town around this. Well, because the first person they called was the police, it got listed in a local police blotter up in New York. And the press picked it up. And they said, oh my goodness, there's a haunted house in New York. We're in our little town. And all of a sudden it became a big phenomenon. Press started coming from all over the country to learn more about this and to find out what was going on in this house. Why were all these phenomena happening where things were moving around, falling off walls, bottles that just kept spilling over? Well, it was a family that lived in this house, just mom, dad, little boy, and a little girl. They contacted the Rhine as well. And that J.B. Rhine sent two people up there, one named William Roll, another named Gaither Pratt. And they went up to investigate. As soon as they entered the building, the house, they were mobbed. There were reporters everywhere. They couldn't really do any sort of clean investigation with it. So they stayed with the family, got to know them, heard about the phenomena, and then they left because they were only there for a day or so. After they left, they came back 2 weeks later and they snuck in. So no reporters around. It was the family in their normal environment. And they spent a few weeks with them. And they started to experience similar sort of phenomena. They saw plates that seemed to fly off the table on their own. They heard noises in the other room and found furniture overturned while no one was in the room. Well, as this is all going on, they're trying to figure out, where is this coming from? How is this happening? And they've noticed that there was one thing that was always present when these events occurred, and that was this teenage boy named Jimmy Harriman. It was their son. And he was just a young teenage boy. And anytime these events happened, he was in the house. When he was gone, it never happened. And not only was it when he was in the house, but it happened in his room. His dad reported that his dad was in the bathroom brushing his teeth. Jimmy walked in and a shampoo bottle slid across the sink and fell over and knocked the shampoo all over. So it seemed to be all around this boy named Jimmy. As they started to look at it in more detail, they saw that Jimmy seemed to be a little bit anxious. He's a teenager, right? Teenage boy. He seemed to be a little bit anxious and jealous of his sister. And they said, well, instead of this being a ghost, because we don't know that ghosts are there who are moving things around, it always happens around this one boy. It might be a case of psychokinesis, mind-matter interaction. from this
Or
little
he
boy.
was he's tying strings to shampoo bottles.
Well, that was the first thing they thought.
I thought that's where you were going. That the kid was pranking, but the other, he's got something that he can't control.
Yeah, and so like suppressed anxiety or anger that caused these events to happen, and they came up with this concept, and they called it recurrent spontaneous psychokinesis. It's RSPK is the terminology we use. And what that means is it's psychokinesis that is unconscious, but it happens over and over again. And it happens spontaneously. No one's really controlling it. So it's coming from this little boy's anxiety, from his feelings in the house that he doesn't feel like he can really express. And instead of expressing it in words, it's coming out in terms of psychokinesis. This was their concept. And so they introduced this in 1958. And over the next 20 years, William Roll, one of the initial investigators, continued to investigate these cases and saw similar things occurring over and over again in many cases, always seeming to focus around one individual who seemed to be upset about something or have some disturbance in their life. And then they started to see these things happening. Now, in your case, Jimmy, with what you're seeing, it may not be that you're disturbed or that you're anxious or upset about something, but it may be that, hey, you kind of like this. And so unconsciously, you're kind of helping this to happen.
I agree.
And you might have a little bit of PK going on
in
your life.
Too. That's possible too. That's possible too. I think about that a lot. I also, because I live alone, it's too easy to scare the crap out of yourself. It's way. And I could tap out and lose my mind and get scared. Or I've chosen to talk back to the ghost. When I say talk back, not nasty. I'm just like, man, I'm not getting out of bed to go and check you out. Do your thing. I'm busy over it. And I'm saying these things out loud. I'd rather do it that way than jump up and get my flashlight, run around the house, freak out, and crawl back into bed. And what? Why? And that's just been my attitude with it. I know that I'm nothing special. Everybody deals with this. When I was a kid, I want a very important question about the Rhine Institute next. But I'll say this. When I was a kid, I was sitting on my grandfather's lap. I was probably 4, maybe 5 years old. And there was like a college football game on. And my grandmother, who I could see her back, she's in the kitchen on the other, like living room, dining room, kitchen. I could see her on the other end of the house. Her back's to us. And I'm sitting there and I hear something come from their bedroom, which is off to my left. We're watching TV, but I hear this noise. And I'm young and I hear it again. And I look at my grandfather like, man, are you hearing what somebody is in the bedroom? And my grandmother says, my grandfather's name was Cal. My grandmother says from the kitchen, our ghost is back. And she's drying dishes, man. You know what I mean? She didn't even turn around. I'm like, ghost, looking at my grandfather, looking at the thing. But this is just another house in America, right? Everybody's dealing with this stuff.
Well, and when you're talking about being in bed and hearing noises, this is a good time to have cats because you can always blame it on the cats at that point and say, I'm going back to sleep. It's the cats that are doing it. But when you're in an environment like that and it becomes common, like you were talking in your grandmother's house, starts to become so common we don't know that it is or isn't ghosts. We just have other explanations that seem to make more sense. Now, there might be a time where it could be, there are occasions where there have investigated poltergeist cases, investigated these sort of disturbances we're talking about. And most of the time, people do not see apparitions, like don't see anything there that indicates there's a ghost there. Oftentimes, researchers will bring mediums with them. A medium who might be able to communicate with spirits, and they'll say, there's nothing here. But I think that little boy over there might be a little bit upset.
Right.
And so these are the types of things, but there are occasions where there are apparitions that are there at the same time as you have these activities. In those cases, we have to start thinking, well, maybe it's the ghost who's using their PK, their psychokinesis. Because, ghosts don't have bodies, so they can't push things around and move things. If they're going to move things, they have to use their intention or their mind, just as if we're attributing that to ghosts, we have to say, well, if ghosts are living people who have passed on, well, then living people probably can do this too. And we see this in our labs, that people are able to affect objects and move objects. We've done a lot of research with different ways to test people. In fact, there was one woman back in the 1970s.
Well, let me stop you there. No, let me stop you there. No, we'll come back to the woman in the 1970s. What is the Rhine Institute?
Okay, well, it's a Rhine Research Center. And the Rhine Research Center has been around for 90 years now. It started back in 1935 at Duke University. J.B. Rhine was this young guy who back in the 1920s, he was interested in studying the seminary. And he was thinking about going to seminary school, but he also really liked the sciences. Well, he was in college at the University of Chicago, and his wife was also at the University of Chicago, and they were both studying biology at this point. He went to a lecture by a man named Arthur Conan Doyle, who wrote the Sherlock Holmes mysteries, right? And so he went to a lecture at the University of Chicago, but it wasn't about Sherlock Holmes. J.B. Rhine was there, and he actually heard him speaking about work he was doing with the Society for Psychical Research in UK, looking at mediums, trying to understand, are spirits real? Are these mediums actually getting information from spirits? Well, JB was so impressed with what he heard that there was a scientific organization that was exploring this. He went home to his wife and he said, I think I finally found a way to combine my interest in spirituality with my interest in the sciences. He started to contact other people who were doing similar work in the States. And eventually he contacted this man named William McDougall, who was up at Harvard at the time, who happened to be starting a psychology department at a brand new university in Durham called Duke University. And he said, JB was a young guy with a PhD. And he said, would you like to come and teach at the university and be part of my psychology department? And I'll let you study mediums in our psychology department. This was no one in the country was doing this at a university level at that time. Well, JB, he immediately realized in order to study these mediums scientifically, he needed to find out, hey, are they really communicating with spirits? Now, back at that time, right after World War I was over, before World War II, there were a lot of people who were interested in mediums.
Oh, it was it. That was the thing.
Yeah, it was a crazy time though too, because mediums at that time were, you'd go to the medium's home, and when you went to their home, they'd meet you at the door, or someone would meet you at the door, and they'd bring you down a long, dark hallway, and they'd bring you into a big room with a big round table, and it'll be very dark, candles around, and they'd sit everyone down, and everyone would touch hands, and then into the room would come this medium. And the medium would have veils around them, and they're shrouded in mystery.
Austrian accent.
Yes. And so they'd sit down at the table and then they would try to call spirits. And what would happen is trumpets would play, coins would drop on the table, voices would be heard from it was essentially entertainment, right? There was a way that people had some fun on a Friday, Saturday night, a way to go out and enjoy it. But it seemed that some of them were getting information that they probably shouldn't know. So when JB started to look into this, he started wondering, well, maybe this medium isn't actually getting this information because, well, they're talking to my Uncle Joe who passed away a few years ago, who's sitting on their shoulder, but maybe they're actually getting that information from me. Mind-to-mind communication, telepathy. Or maybe back at my house, I got Uncle Joe's library, you know, with his bowling trophies, his smoking jacket, his little bottle of gin in the bottom drawer, and somehow she's able to see all this from a distance. Clairvoyance, getting information about objects or events from a distance. Or maybe in about a half hour, I'm going to tell her everything there is to know about Uncle Joe. And somehow she's able to get that information through time, precognition. And so before JB could say that she was speaking, this medium was speaking to spirits, he had to know, can people do telepathy? Can they do clairvoyance? Can they do precognition? And he developed these ESP cards. I'm sure you've seen them, Jimmy. The circle, the wavy lines, the square. And they developed these cards for testing ESP and started doing experiments. And in 1935, they founded the Duke Parapsychology Lab, the first active parapsychology lab that's still in operation. That was at a university. The Rhine Research Center now is the evolution of that. We don't use the ESP cards anymore. We found other ways to do testing, but we are still doing research to look into these phenomena. But we've gone past, hey, do they happen? Are these things real? All of the things I've mentioned to you, JB had a great deal of evidence that have been published in peer-reviewed journals that indicate that telepathy is real, clairvoyance is real, precognition is real. In addition, he found that mind-matter interaction, or PK, is real as well. So we've gone past where we're trying to prove that it's real. We're trying to figure out, how does it work? Why are some people better at it than others? How come it doesn't work all the time with everyone? And these are some of the things that we're continuing to explore at the Rhine.
Was he like Walter Bishop from Fringe?
Yeah. Well, you know, JB was a scientist.
You know what I mean, though, right? He was a scientist. You know, where Walter Bishop has a lab at Harvard University, deals with everything that you just listed, right? That's his thing, and he's just trying to figure out how everything works, and applying the science to it. And that's what I wasn't being cavalier or trying to crack a joke. You know, was that his approach was to apply scientific methodology to these things that we can't necessarily touch or feel.
Well, that's exactly what he was doing. He was using modern methodology methods, modern statistical methods to examine them and publish it. He started a journal that was peer reviewed. And, you know, it's the top scientific level that we can get at, having peer-reviewed publications. And there were many publications. It spread all over the world where other people started doing similar experiments to him. Now, where a lot of the TV shows kind of vary is they're oftentimes making these crazy machines to try to, you know, like, you know, if you look in Ghostbusters where they're putting things on their heads, or, you know, Back to the Future, or trying to see if they're telepathy machines. Yeah. That's not what was going on. And that's not what we do now. Well, I don't speak about that in public, but that's not what we do now. Right. So, you know, we're still trying to look at the phenomena and trying to say, hey, where did it come from? How did it happen?
My experiences that I have, and others too, okay, but the experiences, I cannot change those. They are real things. Nobody's going to change my mind, okay, about the experience. But are the experiences paranormal, or is there a scientific explanation for these things and movement? And when I don't have a cat,
So when we look at it, we look at the phenomena and we try to see if we can explain it based on any physical phenomena that might be there, like a cat that might be around, or a little boy with a piece of string pulling on something. You know, we look at that first. We also look at things like, is your house surrounded by high power lines? You know, are there other things that are in the environment that might cause these things to happen? But once we've determined that we really can't see any physical means for it, we then look and see if there's any evidence that there might be other mechanisms, what we would call psi, occurring. And psi includes all the extrasensory perception, telepathy, clairvoyance, and precognition, and psychokinesis. These have all been demonstrated in the lab. And since we've seen them in the lab, it only makes sense to say that, hey, that might be happening to you. That might be something that's happening in this house. So then we can start exploring that possibility and determining whether it's real. So I'm not going to say, oh, it's, you know, when we say paranormal, it means so many things to so many different people. You know, I'm talking about parapsychology, where we're talking about very defined terms that we're using for the science here. And when we're looking at these very specific phenomena. We're trying to see if we see evidence of it, trying to understand where it came from.
Now, have you had your own poltergeist experiences? I mean, what gets you into this very, very strange subject that I enjoy so much?
Yeah, a very good question. You know, well, you know, I've always been interested in what I now call parapsychology. And these sort of phenomena. I kind of grew up in an environment where it was very well accepted that manifested visualizations, hypnosis, healing, you know, this was all part of my family growing up. My mom did healing, her mom did healing. And when I was learning it when I was a kid, it was just natural. It wasn't weird until I started talking to my friends. And then I realized, oh, not everyone does this at home. So this is where I started to realize this is something different. And I was scaring some people away. So I decided, you know, I really need to find a way to describe this to him and explain it to him. My dad was an engineer. And he was looking for practical ways to solve problems. And I thought, well, maybe if I tried to explain this from a scientific perspective. This is when I was an early teenager. I'm thinking about this because, you know, like I said, I was scaring my friends. And so I always wanted to learn how to do this scientifically. And it wasn't until I was 20 that I learned that there were places already doing that were studying parapsychology. That's when I started to learn more about the research that was going on at the Rhine Research Center and other things that were going on at ARE, where the Edgar Cayce Institute is. And later, I learned about IONS, the Institute of Noetic Sciences, where Edgar Mitchell had come back from space with this feeling that we're all connected. There is a connection between all of us that we really need to explore. Well, that was what I was interested in, these connections between all of us. So now fast forward, life happens, right? I have many different jobs, do many different things. And at one point I say, okay, it's time for me to really do this science related to these phenomena that I know about. So I went to the Rhine. I happened to live in Durham. I went to the Rhine and started to talk to them. And I went back to school and learned research and analysis methods and started to study to learn more about these connections. Well, one day I'm sitting in the office and one of the researchers who's in the area said, hey, we have this woman who she's had near-death experiences, and we're going to bring her down because she said she can affect these wheels inside of jars. I sat at the table with 11 researchers in the Rhine Library and watched this woman sit at the end of the table, and she put her hand next to a jar that had a aluminum foil wheel inside of it. Mm-hmm. And the wheel started spinning. And I was just freaked out. I was like, I've never seen anything like this before, like right in front of me. So I pulled out my cheap little camera on my phone at that time, and I ran over and I was like, videoing. And I said, hey, would you do me a favor? Can you stop it? And she took her hand away and it stopped. I said, start it up again. And she did. So I was like, well, stop it again. Can you make it move in the other direction? She puts her finger on the outside of the jar and starts moving it like this, and the wheel starts moving in the other direction. I'm checking her fingernails. I'm checking under the table. This was in our library, and it was still happening. It was, I mean, when you see something like that in real life, it really changes your whole perspective on things.
You remember at the Psy Games, we had four contestants up there on stage doing it at the same time. And I not only was I was the host, right? So I'm walking behind each. You saw me, but my point being, I was seeing this for the first time, and in two of the cases, by the way, I was just with the winner
Sean,
of that, the one at the very end.
Yeah, Sean. I think it was Sean. Yes.
Well, I just ran into him in San Diego.
Oh,
he just steps on the elevator. Hey, Jimmy. I was like, dude, what do you, whoa. Anyway, that was his first time.
Mm-hmm.
You know, two of the four up there had never done it before. And I found that interesting. So I did it too, as well. I did it a few times over the weekend. Very interesting. I'm not saying I have abilities, but I think we all have it to some degree. We just don't, work out in the gym with it and you know what I mean? Perfect it.
Yeah, well, it's like we consider it like any other skill or ability. If you practice it, you get better at it. Some people have a natural, I often refer to it similar to the way I talk about sports, right? Anybody can swing a golf club and hit a ball. But some people have a very natural and easy swing, and they're going to do it much more easily than someone like me. Right. But then you got some people who don't have a natural ability, but they work really hard at it. And they're going to get better and better until they could get to the point where they could do pretty well. But the ones who have the natural ability, who practice all the time, they become the pros. They become the champions.
Do you remember one of the things that I enjoyed about that whole experience was, the contestants, me on stage with a microphone. That doesn't suck. That's a lot of fun. All that. No, man, it was the audience.
Yeah.
Holy crap. So everybody understands, 4 contestants, 4 cameras pointing down. So we had big screens up in this large ballroom where everybody could see what was going on in real time.
And the contestants had their back to the audience.
Their back to the audience. They're concentrating, man. They were just right. And man, right. And I'm listening to the audience, yell, because they're yelling for contestant number 2. He's got, or contestant number 1, and I'm watching what the audience, seeing that in real time. This isn't a documentary, right? This isn't something on TV. This is live. It's a contest going on. And wow, did it get loud in there, didn't it? Woo!
It was a game show environment.
It was great.
But it was not, wasn't the game show where it was kind of staged in any way. It was very spontaneous. The reactions were real.
It was the audience. I can only imagine what I would be feeling if I was sitting in the audience watching something like that. Oh, wow. It was really cool to hear them cheering everybody on. And if you remember, I went up and I'm interested in your interactions with people that you do research with, because I would ask them, go up. They're sweating, man. I mean, they just finished, doing the thing. They got 1,000 people yelling, in a room. Did the audience oh yeah, man. I was listening to them cheer, and I felt their vibration, and they would have to. Do you get the same kind of responses with people that you're working with?
Well, you know, first of all, when you say they were sweating, it wasn't that they were sweating because they were concentrating so hard and working so. No, it was that they were in front of a big audience, probably for one of the first times in their life ever.
Right,
and so they were nervous about what was going on. And yet they performed in that environment. That's something that we would have never, you know, as a researcher, we always try to make people very comfortable, make them happy about what's going on. We don't put them in situations where they're going to have to perform in front of 400 people in a big auditorium, you know?
Yeah.
So we don't usually see that sort of thing. But
remember when I would go, I did do that though. Are you nervous? Right? No, sit down, relax. It's just you and I on stage. But yeah, because they're it's a contest, it's a game show, live audience, loud fat dude screaming into a microphone, right? No, I'm being very serious. And mark, set, go, right? But they did great, man. They did great.
And you know, the most amazing thing I saw as a researcher, the most amazing thing I saw, the ones that were spinning a wheel really quick inside of a container, but the ones that were able to stop it and make it go the other direction.
Well, they had to follow. Okay,
change it back.
Okay, I want to be clear to everybody. Understand, this wasn't willy-nilly. They had instructions that were in front of them. It would pop up random. Stop it. Reverse direction. Stop it. Reverse direction. Stay. Faster. Stop. That's what they had to do. And so when you see somebody, that thing's whizzing, and then it says stop, they got to stop that thing. And everybody had their own technique too.
Yes.
Right. Everybody had their own way of focusing. But then when that thing says stop and it's whizzing and they got to stop it and it stops and then reverses direction, the audience is watching that. You know, and wow, woo, yelling. They thought they were seeing Foghat open up for Peter Frampton in 1977 or something at Cobo Hall in Detroit. Yeah. It was crazy, man. It was a lot of fun.
Well, you know, it's control. That demonstrates control. Yeah. More than just, you know, getting a really big reaction. It demonstrates control. They're able to consciously make a decision on what they wanted to see. And that's what I was seeing with this one woman who was in our library at the Rhine. And like I said, it's the first time I saw it. And so that I had never been interested in PK. No, I was interested in the connections between people, not so much affecting the world with your mind. But then a few weeks later, I had another guy come into my lab, and he was a completely different attitude, completely different perspective, and he was affecting electronic equipment, like random number generators. He was creating a static field that seemed to be moving things back and forth without touching them. This was two people doing mind matter interactions that I saw within a month. It's rare to even see one person do that in a controlled situation in a lab. So when I saw two of them within a month, I just had this feeling, you know, I would be doing a disservice to the field if I don't study this. I need to look into this and understand why these people are having these experiences. What is it about them? And so that's what I studied for the. I'm still studying it now.
Are you suggesting, which I'm okay with, are you suggesting that I am creating this? Kind of like, what was the movie Forbidden Planet, right? Where they created the monster through their id.
Right. Well, whether it's, see, now when you're talking about creating a monster, that's when we talk about a tulpa. It's like a tulpa is like a double that you're making of yourself, or like a golem, something that you're making independent of yourself that starts to get its own attitude. But what I'm suggesting is not that you're creating another Jimmy, God forbid, but actually that what you're doing is your own feelings are creating this PK effect. Maybe because you want to. Maybe because you really want to see some of these things happen. Maybe because they fascinate you. Maybe because your own ability to express this way is really exciting to you.
Okay, let me, staying on poltergeist. I'm going to get to the 1970s lady.
Okay. Right.
Yeah, we blew right past that. Hmm? This is when I first moved into this house. Day one. Day two. day one. Day two. Day one was with my daughter. Day two, house is empty. It's a big house. Okay. So all the rooms were empty. It's 5 bedrooms, all empty. Okay. You follow me? House is empty. You can hear the echo. And, but the van is here with boxes, and those get unloaded into the garage. Okay. I grab a box and I go upstairs into my master walk-in closet that has shoe racks in it. All right. We were talking about that earlier.
Right.
And so I'm filling up the shoe racks with shoes. And I'm proud of the way I display shoes. That's for another show. But I'm laying out. So I get row 1 done. Right. I'm going downstairs. I'm getting boxes, and I come back upstairs, and, and I lay out, row 2, nice and neat. And I step back and I look at it. And I went, oh, okay. All right. Looks good. I go downstairs, get a cup of coffee, grab another box of shoes. It's about an hour later. I'm doing other stuff, moving it. But I go back up, another box of shoes, and I go into the walk-in closet, and on the floor in front of me is a pair of shoes stacked up on top of each other. And I went, what? Did I forget to put? I see where they came from. I see the empty spot on the shelf. Didn't I look at them and say, job well done? Right? Pat myself on the back. Didn't I do that? Maybe okay. So I put the shoes on the shelf and I do row 3. Right? Okay. And I get that back and I step back and went, okay, cool. All right. Back downstairs for another box. Cup of coffee, come back up, 45 minutes, hour later, and walk into the walk-in closet, another pair of shoes sitting on the floor, crossed. Like 3 feet from the, and I screamed, ah! And I backed up out of the closet, I dropped the thing, and I went, crap. And I'm standing in the bathroom, and I leaned against the sink. And I'm serious. I'm like, okay. All right. It's all good. And I'm talking to the ghost. At that point, and I screamed and I freaked out. And this went on, the shoe thing, for months. Different pairs, different things, sometimes 2 pairs. Out. And it was maybe a month later. It's hard to, it was 5 years ago, but it was like a month later, I'm lying in bed and with my iPad, house is shut down. I just finished the show, right? I'm in bed, got my iPad, my reading glasses, right? And man, boom, boom. And I put the iPad down, and I'm like, look, I'm not coming in to the closet. You can put all the shoes on the floor that you want. I'm in bed with my blankie, and I'm not getting up. I said it out loud. Now I get up in the morning, and I've got 2-3 pairs of shoes on the floor, but I've become nonchalant with it. Now, so when you say, is it me doing it? It started from the moment I moved into the house.
Mm-hmm. Well, really, really cool case. Really, really interesting things, because these are objects of focus for you. You have a great deal of invested, your personality. You have a lot invested in these shoes. You give them a lot of attention. And so this is something that could be a focus object for you. At the same time, you wouldn't want to mess with them. You don't want to pull them off the shelves. And this is where the first thing we would look at as researchers is we would look at your closet and look at the carpentry that's done there. Look at the angles of how things, and see if this could just fall. It doesn't sound like these are just falling.
Oh, no. I've had so many people come in, I've told the story enough, and I'll bring people over to the house and they want to see the shoes, right? They want to go. So I'll go, okay, man, let's go. And that's the first thing they do. They go up and they try to move the shoes. And I'm like, oh, whoa.
Right.
Oh, okay. No, these aren't falling. But yeah, I put a lot of, so I made a deal. Okay. Let me ask you this. So I made a deal with the ghost. Okay. Again, this was a verbal thing I said out loud. I came in, there's another pair of shoes on the floor. I said, okay, all right. Do you want me to wear? Are you picking these out for me? Is this what you want me to wear today? I will wear the shoes that you want me to wear. So I was doing that, John. Every day I'm like, okay, what shoes are in here today? I'll wear these and go. And I did that for a long time. It stopped though. It stopped. I haven't had it happen, like legit happen, for probably a year.
Well, but if you're
letting every day though, for a year, for sure.
If you're paying attention to it and you kind of, you made a logical assumption. Well, maybe these are the shoes I'm supposed to wear. A lot of people get frightened by it and just be, oh, no. The shoes are scary. I don't want to be near them. But you said, no, okay, maybe these are the ones I'm supposed to wear. You're making peace with it. You're taking it to the next step and saying, hey, there's something going on here, and I'm gonna vibe with it.
Is that the advice you would give to anybody? Because that sounds like good advice.
Well, anytime if it were something that was coming from you, and honestly, Jimmy, anything in your life, if there's something going on in your life that you're not really understanding, if you can vibe with it and get comfortable with it, you're going to be a happier person. So that is advice I would give people in many different situations, unless it's destructive or disruptive to the environment somewhere. If it's something that's bothering you or bothering other people, then we want to try to find a way to see if the phenomena can be calmed down and stop. And this is kind of what we started to do whenever we looked at some of the more recent cases that I've been working with. And they came from that case that happened back in the 1970s as well. So we can get into that. It's a little bit of a longer case. I don't know if you want to start that.
We're up against a break, but this in radio is called a tease. So
okay.
we'll tease and then we'll come back from the break. What was the case?
So there was a woman in Ohio, a young girl in Ohio, and her name at that time was Tina Resch. She was living in a house with foster parents, and the parents were adopting lots of children coming in, and they started noticing unusual phenomena that seemed to focus around this girl, Tina Resch.
That is a perfect set. That is a perfect setup. I'm already scared. I'm already scared. Our guest tonight, John Kruth. We're talking poltergeist because it is Halloween. John, you stay right there. I am your host, Jimmy Church. This is Fade to Black. Stay with us. We'll be right back after this short break. Subscribe to our YouTube channel to get your alerts and access to over 2,000 videos. Click that subscribe button right now. Go to jimmychurchradio.com and get the Fade to Black official podcast. 2,000 episodes, all of them commercial free for just $2 a month. Watch Into the Vortex on Gaia TV. It's Fade to Black for the screen. Simple to do. Go to Gaia.com, search Jimmy Church, or click on the link below. Follow Fade to Black on Twitter at JChurchRadio. Get all of the show updates every single day. It's now called X, but who cares? How you doing? Jimmy Church here. Special announcement. Get your Fade to Black t-shirts. That's right. Help support the show. Help support everything that we do over here. We've got 2 t-shirts. We've got 2 ways to get them. Get your Fade to Black t-shirt today. Go Beckley Teppy. Go to jimmychurchradio.com and become a Fadernaut. Get a membership. That's right. Everything is commercial free. You have access to downloads, and you get to call yourself a Fadernaut.
Jimmy Church Guy TV, Fade to Black, here at Machu Picchu with Brian Forster and Hidden Inca Tours. Amazing tour so far, Brian, but we're here to announce what we're going to do next year in 2026. What's going on?
Okay, November 2026, we're going to have our major tour of Peru and Bolivia, either a pre or post tour of Paracas and Nazca on the coast. And then after that, 6 days in Easter Island.
Bucket list, Easter Island. Come join Brian and I and his amazing team here at Hidden Inca Tours for Peru, Bolivia, and Easter Island. Signing out. Say goodbye, Brian.
Bye, gang.
River Moon Coffee, makers of the Fade to Black blend. Truly the best coffee on planet Earth. Just visit rivermoonwellness.com or their Amazon store. It's all simple to do. You can check out the Fade to Black blend, the Game Changer blend, or any of their Black Moon Wellness products. It's the only coffee I drink. It is the best, and it's Doc. Again, rivermoonwellness.com. All right. Welcome back, Fade to Black. I am your host, Jimmy Church. Tonight, we've got John Kruth with us from the Rhine Research Center, and they've also the Rhine Education Center. The links for everything are below. We're talking poltergeist tonight. It's Halloween. Let's have some fun with this. Before we get back to the woman from the 70s, I want to share this with you and the audience. This is kind of the stuff that I put up with around here. A couple of years ago, I've got a lot of motorcycle helmets, and I get this Harley Davidson keychain that's got this on it, and it's a thick rubber Harley Davidson logo. Okay, all right, you can see it's thick, and it's pretty good size, right? And I decide that I'm going to glue this to the front of one of my helmets. That was my plan. So I cut the little rings off of for the keychain. I cut that off, and I put this on my island in my kitchen. Come over to my house, you will see that the house is spotlessly clean any time of the day. I don't care. Do a surprise visit. My stuff's right. It's clean. So sitting this on the island, it stands out. Okay. All right. Okay. So for about a week, I'm coming down every morning to make my coffee. I walk into the kitchen. This is sitting on the island. And I remind myself, today's the day I put that on my helmet. Today's the day. Right. After a week. And so I come down in the kitchen one day to make my coffee. And I walk in and it's gone. Okay. And I went, and I'm looking, there's no place for it to go. Right? I'm like, looking, where did it go? And it's not there. And so I thought that I moved it into the garage and I just spaced it out. I'm getting old. I forgot about it. And I go into the garage. I make my coffee, go into the garage, look for it. It's not there. It's not on my workbench. I'm like, man, a keychain. Now it's bothering me. Okay. Couple of weeks go by. I order stuff off of Amazon. I end up adding the stuff to my helmets, right? I get all of that done. And I kind of forgot about it. A couple of weeks, I go into the kitchen to make my coffee, and it's on the island, sitting there. And I stop. I'm like, man, I don't need this. I don't need that. I don't need this in my life. What is going on? And that was 2 years ago. It's still sitting on my bench in the garage, just reminding me. And I went and got. Now, is that poltergeist? Is that me moving stuff around? Is that some Jedi Vulcan mind meld thing that I'm doing? I don't. How do you explain that away?
I'm not sure we can explain it away, but it's a different type of phenomena, though. It's not what we call poltergeist. We would actually call this an apport. It's where objects seem to disappear and then reappear either in another location or at another time in a different place or in the same place. You were talking about when you first got into the house and your shoes and what was going on. It reminded me when I first moved into this house, I was moving in from another place and most of my furniture was still at my other place. My house here, I have 9 rooms. I had 7 pieces of furniture in the house. And one of them was this bar stool that I would sit on when I was playing guitar. And so I had that up in the living room, and I'm just kind of relaxing. I didn't even have a TV in the house. I'm just sitting up in the living room. I'm relaxing, having a little drink. And I get up and walk away and come back a few minutes later. And I'm like, where's my chair? Because it's one of the chairs that it was one of the only seats I had in the house. And I was like, I couldn't find it. I'm looking around the living room like, what? I'm thinking, what, man, did I just become blind to this? Did it fade into the carpet or background or something? So I couldn't find it. So I went back and I was like, well, maybe I took it with me. And when I went in the other room, no, nothing there. There are 9 rooms in the house, 7 pieces of furniture. I walked through its entire house. I spent a half hour searching for this bar stool, and it was nowhere to be found.
Okay, what's the end of the story? What happened? About
half hour later, I did what you did. I started speaking to the walls, and I said, okay, I give up. I don't know where it is. I'm going to sit on the floor and play my guitar. So I sat and played my guitar for a while. Later on, I went in the kitchen to get a drink. Right in the middle of my kitchen floor is that bar stool.
So did you place it there and space it?
I can't imagine. I didn't even go into that room.
That's what a skeptic is going to tell you, right?
Well, it could have been, I did have a couple beers that night. People could say that I got lost, but, I didn't have that many beers. I was just sitting down to play.
I know.
And so it just, I have no explanation for it. Did that come from me? Did it come from the house? I have no idea. But it's the idea of an object disappearing and reappearing later. We hear about these all the time. We also hear about people who kind of materialize objects out of the air. There have been, what was his name? There have been different people who, special Indian type of mystics, who are able to materialize rings out of the air and give them to people. And you can talk about sleight of hand, but there were times where what they would materialize. There was one story about a man who materialized a ring, gave it to this young man who was in the circle with him, and he said, "Where did you find this? I lost this when I was in the ocean 10 years ago."
Right.
And it was the same ring with the same inscription on it.
Could it be, and I'm sure Rhine has looked into this, and I know Ions has too as well. Is it something as simple as maybe 2 dimensions, 2 worlds are overlapping for just a second, where in that other world, that ring was in a different spot, and somebody is able to grab onto that ring, as you know what I mean, as the worlds collide. He grabs the ring at that moment. In our world, he lost it 10 years ago scuba diving in Key West. In this other alternative version, it's, you know what I mean? Is it something like that, just like my shoes or anything else like this? Is it just two dimensions overlapping briefly?
Well, when we're talking about that, you're talking about like the multi-world theory, that there are many dimensions,
everything
that are
happens
splitting off at different times, and that somehow these worlds might cross at different points, like string theory, when the strings kind of touch each other, and then potentially someone could jump from one dimension to another or back. And this is a really interesting theory. We don't really have any evidence to support the fact that they actually exist. So when we're looking at things from a scientific perspective, we say, well, that's a good story, but let's look for something that's, and when we're looking at it from the perspective, when I look at what happened to me, I start wondering, and what happened with you with that little Harley logo, I wonder if there's some sort of time slip going on.
Mm-hmm.
Where there's something where, something moved through time, but you didn't move with it. And it was in a different location. That's why it reappeared in the same place. In my case, it ended up in a different location, but it wasn't in the house for, 45 minutes or an hour. And then all of a sudden it was back. This is why we continue to study this stuff.
I know, right? That it's
so fascinating.
I know that it happened to you, just like you've just described it. When I share these experiences with people, I know what I sound like, but I'm not the only one. This happens. Right. I think that it happens in every house on the planet, whether you want to admit to it or not. I'm talking about every house on the planet. Whether you want to admit to it or talk about it or whatever, that doesn't mean that the phenomena isn't real and it doesn't occur.
Right.
A person of science will try to explain it away, but they have the same experiences that we do.
Well, and this is, being a researcher, following science and following scientific method, I try to make these things go away. We do things in a lab. We try to make them go away. We do everything possible to make them go away. And when they still happen, we say, okay, we have to follow the evidence. The evidence says it's happening. So how is it working? And that's where we are now at the Rhine and in the field of parapsychology, trying to figure out, why do people have these experiences? Why do some people have more than others? And can we figure out how it's happening?
Now, back to the lady from the 70s.
Okay.
What happened?
All right. So I'm going to make this kind of quick, because Tina Resch was, as I said, she was a young girl who was living in a house with foster parents. And her parents were bringing in other foster children who were getting adopted all the time. Tina had stayed there a long enough time. She was older. She wasn't getting adopted. And she saw all these other children coming in, and she was kind of jealous. She was upset. She was anxious about it. Well, they started seeing all sorts of activity occurring in the house, where a blanket would fly across the room, where telephones would seem to move. It seems like objects would fall off the wall and fall off and hit her, or fall off near one of her family members when they were watching them. It seemed like this happened so often that I told you about this guy named William Roll, who came up with this idea that there was a person, a poltergeist agent, a living person, who was responsible for these things happening. Well, he went to meet the family to learn a little bit more about it, and he investigated this case. And actually, while they were there, they saw some of these phenomena occur. But what he was more interested in than anything else was taking care of this young girl, making sure that she was feeling more comfortable. And so he tried to help her to learn more about what was going on and let her know, hey, this isn't some crazy ghosty stuff going on. We think this might be coming from you when you get upset. And so they brought her actually to Durham, to the Rhine, and had her hanging out with some other people who were her age in the area here. And they started to do some tests to see if, hey, can we test her brain waves? and see if there's anything weird in her brain waves that's different than other people? Can we start to give her psychological tests and examine her using standard psychology? And what they found is that when she had any sort of anxiety about something, spoons would fall off the table around her. One of my friends had her at his house. They were having a picnic outside, and the silverware started flying away whenever some of the kids started to play, and she wasn't allowed until she finished. Things started moving around. There was one of the lab assistants that it was a young man who she thought was really cute. And while she was in the lab being tested and he was walking down the hallway, objects started moving towards him and towards her in these situations. It seemed that what her intentions were seemed to affect the objects and where they would move. At one point, she was in a room, and the researcher heard a loud bang, and on the floor found this large pipe wrench. He's like, where did this come from? Well, it turns out that there was a toolbox that was down the hall in another room with the closed door. Inside the toolbox was this pipe wrench previously. And it hit the door so hard in the lab that it left a mark and was on the floor. These are the sorts of things we hear. And this was a phenomenal case. Was she magnetic? So they tested to see if there was magnetism that might be causing it, or to see if there might be some sort of static fields. They never found anything, although they did find some things in her brain waves and the activity in her in one of her parietal lobes that were causing some of this, or that seemed to be related to this activity. But they weren't sure, because other people have this same anomaly and they don't cause objects to move around. But this went on for years, Jimmy.
Yeah. No, I'm fascinated with it. I mean, it's suggesting that she was magnetic, that's crazier than if it was demons, right? I mean, taking too many iron supplements and too much iron in the blood, and she's, you know what I mean? She's
swimming in salt water too long or something, right?
Right. Suddenly you're magnetic. But wow, that's fascinating. So
she eventually, the guy William Rowe stayed in touch with her for a number of years. She eventually moved back home, and it continued happening, but she at least managed to get a little more comfortable with it, and it didn't happen quite as often. So he was looking for ways to help her with this situation. And I mean, the story goes on, and it actually ends in a bit of a tragedy. She's now in prison, actually, down in Georgia. From situations, because she ended up moving to Georgia where Bill Rowe was, and there was some bad situations went on with her, but that's a whole nother story. I didn't really want to go into.
Remember this case?
Yes.
Naresh
is her name.
Right
now her name is really Christina Boyer.
I remember watching the films of her now.
Yes.
Of this stuff occurring. Oh, I remember this whole thing. That's right. She's in prison. Yeah. Wow.
But it was so apparent it was coming from her, because wherever she was, this phenomena followed her. And so this is one of the things that really started people looking at ways to try to help these people, because that's what it seems to be about more than anything else.
Let's talk about the 21st century study that you guys did back in 2014.
Yeah.
What was the basis of the study, and what did you guys find out?
So, I told you I wasn't really interested in PK, but I had this experience with these people, so I started learning more about it. Well, I was at the Rhine, and one day we get a phone call from a medical doctor who's in another part of North Carolina, and he says, I have a patient who they brought his mom and his grandmother brought him into me and said, there's something wrong with him. Can you check him out? And he said, well, what's wrong with him? And they said, well, anytime he walks by the telephone makes noise. When he's around computers, the computers act up, they break. And whenever there's any sort of electrical appliance around, he seems to break them or have a problem with them. And so they brought him to the doctor, not knowing what to do. So the doctor checks him out, and the doctor's like, well, he examined him. He said, he's a normal, 11-year-old boy. there's nothing really strange going on here. I don't have anything to do, but he knew about the Rhine. So he contacted us. And my first thought is, I'm hearing all these weird stories about telephones and computers, and I'm thinking, it sounds like poltergeist phenomena, but it's slightly different. Back in the 1970s and the 80s, and people were having poltergeists, and objects are flying around, or having, and for centuries, this has been reports like this. But now, in the 21st century, we all carry these things around with us. We have electronics everywhere around us. If we're going to have this unconscious PK activity occur, we might not be affecting large objects, but also affecting electronics. This is something we call micro PK. Macro PK is large objects you can see. Micro PK is affecting electronics. So my first thought is, these people want to get on TV. Back around 2012, 2013, this was a very popular thing. People were reporting there was ghost hunting all over the TV sets, lots of shows. And I was skeptical. So I made arrangements to meet the family at the doctor's office. Went to the doctor's office. I met this mom, the little boy, and his grandma, and the doctor together. And we just had a conversation. And it was very clear to me very quickly that they were describing these phenomena. They wanted it to stop. They were worried about it. The little boy was going to school, and all the tests are computerized these days. His teacher was thinking that he was breaking the computers on purpose so he didn't have to take the tests. And then none of the other kids, so they always made him go last, so the other kids could all take the test first, and then he'd have to take it last.
Right.
They thought he was breaking other electronics. One time he actually got mad in class, and all of a sudden the phones of all the students in the room started to beep at the same time. The teacher thought he was some wizard with the computers. And they were worried because the teachers were saying they're going to give him bad grades. But what sealed it for me was when the little boy, he's sitting next to his grandma, and these are his words. He said, "I'm afraid my electromagnetic field is going to hurt my grandma." That touched me. And I was like, they're not trying to get on TV. They really are sincerely trying to find a way to help this little boy. And so I said, okay, let me arrange for a visit to see if we can figure out what's going on. So I got in touch with one of my researcher friends who has done poltergeist investigations before. He was an electrical engineer at Duke University. He had all kind of equipment to measure magnetic fields and static. And we took a trip out to this part of North Carolina, in rural North Carolina, where they lived. They said most of this stuff happened in their home. So we should pull up in the house, and it's a small house out in the country. First thing I'm looking at is, are there electrical lines overhead? Are there anything in the environment that might be weird? It's weird crystal formations, or anything that might be strange. I didn't see anything in the environment that looked like it might be causing electrical disruptions. We walk in the house, and the house, obviously, they were excited to have somebody come and visit, so they'd cleaned up. Everything was really neat, except there was, on the kitchen counter, there was this big pot that seemed way out of place, and it was turned upside down right on top of the kitchen counter. And I was like, well, that's kind of weird. And so we sat down and we started to talk, and they started telling me about things that were going on. And they were saying, oh, he has some problems with telephones, and he has some problems with the smoke alarm. He has problems with the computer. When the grandma was working in the basement, and on her computer, he walked in the room and the computer broke, and she spent a lot of money to get it fixed. The television set, whenever he used the remote control, it would just flip channels like crazy. But the weirdest thing was what was happening with the phone. This is an 11-year-old boy, right? When he had a phone, the phone started texting the neighbor. And they had a plan at that time where they would be charged for every text. It was texting 2,000 times in an hour. You cannot physically make it do that. And there's no way you could do it.
Can't you wrap the kid up in tinfoil?
Well, okay, this would have been a potential solution.
I would have done it.
That kind of brings us back to this big pot that's on the kitchen counter.
I set you up for that, John.
Yeah.
I set you up.
So I'm like, well, why is this pot there? I asked them, and they said, oh, well, the phone's underneath there. Because if we don't have the phone underneath there, every time he walks by it, the phone makes noise. And so I was like, okay, this is interesting. So they start telling me that anytime his mom called him on the phone, it would they would get all kind of interference, and they couldn't have a conversation. He couldn't have a cell phone because it kept calling the neighbors. The phone did so many weird things, they couldn't fix it anymore. So this is an 11-year-old boy who can't have a cell phone. That's a big deal, right?
That's a big deal.
So his mom's telling me about when she called him that they would get this interference. And I said, well, what phone do you use when you call him? She goes, oh, my cell. And she picks it up. She goes, my cell right here. And I said, and what phone do you call him on? And she said, oh, that one that's underneath the pot over there. So yeah, I'm a scientist. I said, can we try it? So he goes and takes the phone from underneath the pot. It's a wireless phone. And he goes walking down the hallway, and his mom calls him from the cell, and he answers the phone, and his mom's just sitting at the table, and she goes, hi, yeah, up there it goes. And I'm like, real matter of fact, real nonchalantly. And I said, well, where what goes? And she said, I just can't hear him. There's all this noise. And I said, do you mind if I hear it? And so she gives me the phone, and I hear feedback. Real loud feedback coming back on the phone, on and on. And so I was like, gave it to my friend Bill. And I said, Bill, do me a favor, hang on to the phone for a sec and tell me what you hear. Bill heard the same thing. So I walked down the hall where this little boy was with the wireless, and he's there holding the wireless in his hand, and he's shaking it. And he's going, hello, hello. He's really upset because he can't get her to hear him on the phone. And so I was like, hey, calm down a minute. Just take a breath. Can I have the phone? Do you mind giving it to me? And he was surprised to see me there, but he said, oh, yeah, sure. He gives me the phone. I take the phone, and I go, hello, Bill, can you hear me? Bill says, oh, yeah, I hear you fine, John. No problem. I hear everything. I said, hang on a minute, Bill. I give the phone back to this little boy, and I hear Bill from the other room going, there's that noise again. All I'm hearing is that noise. So this happened repeatedly with me and him. So we took him around the house in different locations. We had him use different phones, use my cell phone, Bill's cell phone, other phones in the house. We had him use different carriers, iPhones, Androids, every combination of what we had there. And anytime he had a phone in his hand, we saw this happen.
Was he radiated? Did you Geiger counter him?
Yeah, we actually looked at this. So
Right.
I was following him around with this rod to measure electrical fields around him. Really, really sensitive, because I said Bill was an electrical engineer. I'm
Right.
carrying this rod around. We saw no changes in his magnetic field, no changes in his electrical field. We saw nothing to indicate that there was anything coming from him specifically that we could measure.
That's fascinating. That's fascinating.
So this was with the phones. So now I'm like, this is really crazy. So he had, since I talked to him a bit, he had just gotten a new computer at this time. And he was really excited. It was a little laptop computer. He was really excited and really careful with his laptop computer. And so I was down where his grandmother had her computer broken downstairs. And they had a printer down there. It was on a network in the house. And he said, I really want to show you something that I wrote. It's on my computer upstairs. So he went up to the computer upstairs, his little laptop. And all of a sudden, I'm sitting with his grandma, and the printer turns on, and all the paper feeds through the printer, every single sheet. She very casually turns around, turns off the printer, takes all the paper, puts it back, turns it back on, and one sheet prints. And it was the sheet that he wanted me to see. I said, and she didn't mean anything to her. And I said, what happened there? She goes, oh, that happens every time he tries to print something.
Roll them up in tinfoil.
Yes.
Like a hostess ho-ho, remember?
Yes.
Roll them
Well,
up in tinfoil.
I went up to his room, and I watched him doing it. And we saw the same thing happen with the printer every time. So I said, wait a minute. I watched him reboot the computer, pull up a Word document, press print, did the same thing. I said, let me try it. I took the computer from him, ran through the exact same procedure, one piece printed, no problem.
That's fascinating.
Gave it back to him. The same thing happened. This was the beginning where I'm saying, okay, there's something really unusual going on here. And
Well,
it
you
seems to
mentioned
be centered around this kid.
You mentioned the remote controls,
Right.
Yeah.
So they thought that there was something with their garage door, that whenever he held the remote control, it did weird things. But their garage door actually, this is the scientist coming out, right? Their garage door was just broken. It wasn't him. It was just broken, because anybody could have the same effect. But I watched him walking. So we're sitting at the table in their living room or in their dining room. And Bill and I, it's getting a little later in the day. Bill and I had been, we stopped on the way in, and they were obviously sitting there for a while. And I was like, all of a sudden I wrote, "Have you guys had lunch?" And they were like, "Oh no, we were waiting for you." And I said, No. I said, "You guys should really stop and have lunch. We can pick this up later." Well, the little boy got so excited. He ran into the kitchen and went next to the toaster oven. And he was like going, "Oh boy, because he was excited because he was going to eat a sandwich. And the toaster oven started heating up. Jimmy, it was unplugged. And the toaster oven heated up. So once he ate, it calmed down. The phone was beeping the whole time that he's eating his sandwich, sitting next to it. These things, it was clear that there was something that was going on with him that was causing these disruptions. He walked by a smoke alarm and it started going off. So there was nothing that we could see. There was nothing physical going on. And like I said, the family it was very nonchalant for them. It would happen all the time. It was very casual.
Faraday Cage's bedroom.
Yeah. Well,
put him in there, give him takeout food for the rest of his life. I mean, how do you overcome that? We've all seen like a Twilight Zone episode or Black Mirror or something where you've got the troubled kid that's got parental issues, whatever it is, right? And he's controlling and affecting what's around him because he's been victimized his entire life for whatever reason, right? Mm-hmm. Is that what was going on here? Was there some trauma in his life?
There was nothing apparent in this situation. Like I said, he was living with his mom and his grandma. They all seemed to get along pretty well. He didn't seem to be like really thrown off in any way. But as I was talking before about this Tina Resch situation back in the 70s, there were methods that had been kind of looked into as ways to help calm this situation. So the first thing I did after we all sat down and we recognized that there was something unusual happening is I asked them, "Do you know anything about relaxation techniques, meditation, anything like that?" The family didn't know anything about them. So I taught him a very simple breathing exercise, guided meditation. I taught the whole family because I didn't want his mom to be stirring him up when these things happened at a later time. So right. I taught the whole family how to do these relaxation exercises, these breathing exercises. And I thought, well, maybe that'll help to calm the situation. So if he feels like he's getting worked up, he can calm himself down. But besides this, I taught him a way to do mindfulness. I said, next time that one of these things happen where something goes off or goes crazy around you, I said, think about what would stop. Think about what was I just thinking? And then think about what was I thinking just a minute ago to see if he could recognize the triggers, things that were causing this to happen.
Keep going.
And so the third thing is I gave him one of those little wheels in a jar. And I said, that wheel in the jar, if you focus on it, maybe you can take this unconscious activity and make it conscious and learn how to control it. Well, he never really warmed up with the idea of the wheel in the jar, but he did start doing the relaxation exercises. And after we left that day, about a week later, I got a call from his grandma and said, everything is kind of quieted down. It's almost stopped. And she said he really loves his breathing exercises. So he'll be walking down the hallway or he'll be walking around the house, and all of a sudden he'll just say, "Oh, I have to do my breathing." He'll realize the trigger was coming. and do his breathing exercises and relax. And it all went away. Within a week, everything calmed down and nearly everything disappeared. That was a real success. It seemed like it was working. But about 3 weeks later, they had a disruption in the family structure. And the family had to move out of the house. There was a lot of anxiety. They had to go live in a hotel for a week. And I got a call from his grandma saying, we're hearing all kind of banging and loud noises. We thought that people were in the hotel banging on our door and on the walls, but the management says no one's here. Could this be related to what you were seeing at the house? And I said, yes, that's exactly what we see in poltergeist cases. We hear noises. We see things move. We see this electronic disruption. And I said, have him use the same breathing exercises he was using before. He started using them. The phenomena started to get less and less phenomena. And then when the family situation resolved itself, it all went away.
Now, okay. I love that. But what is the root cause? What is the energy that is being used here? There is something fundamental that is being locked into that is all around us that is being manipulated. Find out what that is. Well,
when you read my bio, you mentioned I was in technology for 20 years. We have this, any technology shop, any software shop you go into, any computer shop where people work a lot together. There's all these stories about the one person who walks in and everything breaks. And then you got these other stories about one person who walks in and everything seems to work better and seems to fix itself. The people who fix things, they're usually the developers, and the people who break things are the testers. So the question I had when I went to the Rhine and started working in the lab was, are those stories real? I mean, we know the stories, but is there something really happening? So I designed a study. As I said, if this unconscious PK activity is happening, it's more likely to show up in electronics than it would have been 25 years ago when there weren't so many electronics around.
Yeah. Fairies have been around for a long time.
Right.
If you know what I mean, right? Before electronics. So the phenomenon has always been here. We just live in an electronic environment where whatever it is. So I'm just curious, what's the energy source that seems to be showing itself?
Right. So I wanted to know first, was this real, and is this unconscious? Does this happen in a controlled environment, not just in someone's house where I can't really control the things? So I designed a study where I had this network running constantly in the house, in a real world environment. I had this network running and this constantly sending the same message back and forth. Now, most networks, they do auto correction if there's an error in transmission, but I changed it so that the network wouldn't do auto correction. I'd actually count the number of errors in this network.
Okay.
And I brought people in and I had them trying to do simple tasks on a computer. They didn't even know the network was in the room. They're trying to do things. It's silly games, like move the ball across the screen, type some certain words in, or find a lost object, or pick the card out of a bunch of cards. These silly games that I created, and I told them, if you finish them in 20 minutes, I'll give you a reward. Like I'll give you some chocolate. So I was trying to get them motivated to finish it quick. Well, half the people came in and they were going through it normally, but half of them, I broke the software on purpose. I made it so when they tried to move the mouse around, it would jump around the screen. Whenever they were typing letters, it would be the wrong letters come up. I was trying to get them irritated. Anxious. And my thought was, any sort of strong emotion might cause this unconscious PK to occur. And it's easier to get people anxious and agitated than it was to produce ecstasy in the laboratory. And so I had this network running, and my idea was, if they're getting agitated and it's causing unconscious PK, I should see more errors on this network that's in the room. That would tell me that all these experiences that I've had in the software lab grown for so many years Maybe there's something to it. And it turns out when people were more anxious, I saw more errors on that network than when they weren't. So it seems that it's something to do with our emotions, something to do with when we have very strong emotions that are causing this unconscious activity to occur.
Is it happening at the extreme quantum level?
I don't know where it's happening. This is the thing. We know, where do emotions come from? You know, we feel them, but we don't know, are they having effects outside of us? And this is where I got very curious about this potential energy that you're talking about. The energy that might be affecting these objects around us. And so I started looking at different energies that we might explore. Things like electricity. We talk to people who do energy healing a lot, or people who have PK effects purposely. And we looked at the electricity that comes from their body. You know, our body's an electrical system, right? We have our nervous system, our brain, there's electrical signals. But in order to measure them, we have to be right up against the body. The electrical field doesn't really expand too much outside of our body. If we get just a few centimeter or so away, we lose the signal. Anytime you have electrical current, you also have magnetism working around that current. So the body has a magnetic field as well. But again, to measure it, we got to be really close to the body. And these effects we're seeing are at a distance from the body. Right. Sometimes a large distance. So it doesn't seem like it's electrical or magnetic. We looked at different things like even static electricity, anything, and we tried to see if we could measure this around people who seem to be having these effects. Well, we hadn't found anything there, but we started looking at light. And the body naturally produces light in the ultraviolet range.
It's just invisible. Don't see it. Yeah,
it's invisible to us.
Right.
Because it's ultraviolet. And so this ultraviolet light, though, it's naturally produced. And there was this guy back in the 1970s named Fritz Popp who started looking at organically produced fruits and vegetables versus those that were not organically produced. And he saw there was a difference in the ultraviolet light that was coming off of these fruits and vegetables. Because it's not only people, it's any animals, plants, even any organic matter, even single cells produce this light. We don't know exactly where it comes from. It's called ultra-weak photon emissions, or a special case is called biophotons that come from any organic matter. So we set up a lab at the Rhine, and we have a really dark room. It's a room that's dark room inside of another dark room. And we have a special piece of equipment there called a photo multiplier tube. This can measure a single photon of light every half second. It's used in very engineering applications and laser technology. We were using it to measure light coming from people and trying to see if we brought in people who are like healers, people who are doing PK, people who are having different sorts of experiences, would we see this light coming from them, and would it be any different than when they're just sitting around doing nothing? So we'd bring them in and say, okay, just sit and do nothing for about 5 minutes, and we get readings about 10 to 12 photons a second. Not very much. That's like no light at all. Really, really dark. You can't see it, of course, because it's in the ultraviolet range, but it's so little light you wouldn't see it anyway. Then we said, start your healing, start your martial arts form, people who talk about chi energies around them, people who are doing PK, we say, start your exercise, whatever it is, and we look for changes from the baseline. With about 90% of the people we brought in, get nothing. Continue to get the baseline the whole time. But with about 10%, we saw a change. And this change of light in this room would go from about 10 to 12 photons a second, go up to 80. That's a big change. Statistically, this is huge.
Right, right.
but I had people go up to 300, thousands of photons, tens of thousands, even had 2 people go over 1 million photons a second. When we have this going on in the room, there's something unusual going on in there.
Well, that's something you can measure. That excites me. Yes.
And what's interesting about light is that it's electromagnetic energy. And so we are actually measuring a change in energy in the room when these people are having the experience that they are having a larger energy flow, or doing a martial arts form where they're trying to increase their chi. So could this light be a reflection of their chi?
You light up a room, takes on a whole new meaning, doesn't it?
Yes. Yes.
I have friends, I joke about this, but I have friends that glow. I'm serious too.
Mhm.
You can tell, you can see them coming, in a group of people, saying that they light up a room. I can, and I'll tease them, you glow, but I wanted to mention this. You brought up guitar earlier. I knew this bass player. I knew him quite well. It's kind of famous, actually. I knew this bass player that when you have an electric guitar plugged into an amp and you take your hands off of it, you unground it, and you can hear it, right?
Mm-hmm.
But you put your hands on the strings, it stops, right? So you're always wanting to touch the guitar, something metal on it to ground it out and to stop the noise, right? Okay. When you play electric guitar, you learn the art of always touching something on the guitar.
Right.
I had a bass player where it was the opposite. He would touch the strings and it would make noise. And dude, anything that he touched made that static. He didn't get many gigs, right?
That's too bad.
But there was something. This guy was electrified.
Mm-hmm.
Famous guy, talented individual, but that was a burden that he carried with him. He was always fighting it with his bass rigs and having to use noise gates and everything else, because everything that he touched a microphone on stage. It's just like, yeah, he was charged. There was something, like I was saying, too much iron in his blood.
Right.
I know I'm joking. It sounds, but our brain, is full of, you know what I mean?
Oh,
we are electric individuals.
Well, and Jimmy, you got to joke about this stuff because it's so weird. We're trying to understand it from a scientific perspective, but hey, when this stuff happens, it surprises us as much as it surprises everyone else. We're looking at it through a different lens, but it's crazy when we see these phenomena occur and see them consistently occurring over and over and over again. And now in this situation you're describing, it could have been his electrical field of his body. It could have been the magnet, because he was touching the strings when it happened. So it may have been, it was something that was, we all have certain times of the year where we walk across the floor and everything seems to be shocking us all the time. And it may be the environment. I'm sure it is the environment a lot of times, but it also seems sometimes like there's something weird about me right now that's going on. And so this whole idea of that case, I could see how it might be electricity in the body or magnetic field in the body or something of this nature. But in these cases where people are working from a distance, where they're not touching the thing, and you can still see these events occurring, that's when it gets really interesting. So here I got this special device to measure lights in the room. And I have this one man I work with quite often. His name is Ed Edwards. And he, nearly every time he comes in my lab, I see these effects from where he produces light. Nearly every session he does.
Do I know Ed?
Yeah, actually, he was at Psy Games. Yes,
Edwards. I know Ed Edwards. Yes. Okay.
So
I know this guy. Right.
Yes.
Right.
So I've been working with him for 15 years. Well, I had him in the lab one time with his doing his normal thing, and he was producing
He's a
light.
Trippy dude, man. I had lunch with Ed.
There you go. Yes, he's quite a character. He's definitely
he's a special guy. You know what he said to me? He goes, "Okay, Jimmy, man, you got to let me do my thing with you." I was like, "Nah, man." I was watching him work with people over those 3 or 4 days, and I had people coming up to me going, "Man, that Ed Edwards, that was incredible, just absolutely incredible." I mean, people like their lives had changed.
Yes.
But I didn't step into the magic box with him. I didn't do it.
Well, I've known him for so long. I've seen these things happening, and he's tried working with me on it. And because I know him really well, I don't get the same sort of reaction as other people do whenever he works with them. But he does seem, many people talk about how he has an effect on them physically, and causes he's able to move them around.
Nice guy. Real cool dude. Yeah. But he's special. He's special.
Yeah, there's a lot of things I can tell you about Ed, but my point is, when I bring him in the lab, he nearly every time gets the result in the lab. I always see changes in the light. Well, I brought him in there one time, and I was like, "Ed, I got this." He knows this device. He opens a shutter. It's like a camera shutter. You pull something, it opens it up, and it lets light into the machine so we can measure the light in the room. So Ed's doing his thing, and I said, "Ed, do me a favor. Close that shutter, but keep doing the same thing." So he goes, "All right." So he closes the shutter. No light can get into the device now. He's doing the same thing, and I still see readings. Like there's light being in the room. So I come to the conclusion there's only two things I can think of. Either he's producing light on the other side of the shutter inside the machine, or he's affecting the electronics of the machine itself, or the monitoring equipment. He's affecting them just like that little boy was having the effect in the 21st century poltergeist case. Just like these people when they were in the experiment where I had the network running, their emotions were affecting the network. In the same way, he was affecting the electronics. Now, it wasn't as strong as when he had the shutter open. So there was clearly light being produced, but it still was there even when the light couldn't get into the machine.
You know what he said to me? He goes, he looks right in my eyeballs, and he goes, "Jimmy, I can do anything." and I was like, "Man." He goes, you want to see something? I'm like, "No, man, I'm good. Scared the crap out of me, man. I mean, very serious in what he was saying. There's nothing I can't do.
He has great confidence.
Yeah.
A great confidence. And that confidence is one of the things that makes it possible to do things. Because, again, I go back to the old sports analogy. If you're a baseball player, you go up to the plate and you don't think you're going to hit the ball, you ain't going to hit the ball.
That's right.
But if you have confidence, you're likely to do it. And his confidence is really strong, so it makes it happen.
He's got that. Yeah. Yeah. Where can everybody not only follow? I want to wrap up what you found in the research, but also with anybody that has interest in this, where can they chase you down?
Well, I'm at the Rhine Research Center, so you can find us at rhine.org. And as you were mentioning, we give classes on parapsychology. We don't teach people to be psychic, but we teach people how to study these things, how to learn more about them, how to do investigations if you think there might be some sort of poltergeist or a spirit or even something like related to reincarnation or near-death experiences. How do you investigate these things? And that's at the Rhine Education Center at rhineedu.org. So you can find all kind of information there as well. We're on YouTube at Rhine Research Center. You can find us on Twitter or X, at the same place, and Instagram. You can find us look for us on social media. If you join our organization And what it is just go to the website and sign up for a membership. It's only $10 a month. It isn't that much, but it provides you with access to things like we do talks. We have people who give talks every month. And so we have 150 or so videos of different really important people in the field, like Russell Targ, Joe McMoneagle, Roger Nelson. We have Lloyd Auerbach. We have so many different people in the field who have spoken for us. You can see videos of their talks and what they discussed. You can get access to all of this, plus some monthly meetings and things. In addition, hey, Jimmy, I don't know if you remember at the Psy Games, there was this woman named Laura Lynn Jackson there. Did you meet Laura Lynn?
Yep.
Laura Lynn is a really famous medium. She's someone who is very well known, and her waiting list as a medium is more than five years long, and she's not taking new people. She's on my board of directors, and she's sponsoring a raffle for the Rhine right now to get a reading from her. You can find that information on our website and get a ticket to the raffle. This is a fundraising raffle to enable us to continue to do our research. We're a nonprofit organization. Allows us to continue to do our research, continue to present events, and have these monthly meetings that we have to help people learn more about these phenomena. So that's the way you can get a hold of me and learn more about all of these things.
You know what's fascinating with me about the science side of this, and we can close on this because we were talking about what this energy source may be. And all the talk right now in the world of physics is dark energy. Right, dark energy. Mm-hmm. There's more than that than regular energy, but we just can't see it. We don't know what it is, and they know something is there. They know that something is causing the movement in space. They know that They know that but they can't see it. They can't touch it. They can't feel it. They can't measure. But it fits their math. They need it, although they can't explain it. And so here we have physics trying to convince us, and it's their job, that dark energy exists, and that's part of their mission is they're going to go and find out what this strange thing is. We, you and I, and this community has been talking about this shit for thousands of years. Right? This is not a surprise to us, but I'm happy that science is now, is it consciousness? Is there something else that is tied into this? All those things that science wants to deny, but it's starting to support what your research is looking into and the phenomena that this community has been enjoying since the dawn of man. And that's what I enjoy. Science is getting closer to figuring out what this, air quotes, dark energy is.
Right. Well, dark energy is essentially energy we don't know from which it comes, right? And so we're trying to looking at this light, this ultraviolet light, and looking at energy healers who talk about moving energies around, talk about martial artists who talk about chi energies, meditators talk about kundalini energies. They're all feeling this thing that feels electric, feels magnetic at times, but they don't find magnetic or electrical fields around them. But this light is an electromagnetic energy. We are finding something that seems to be related to the energy that they're talking about. So this is the work that we continue doing. And, I'm really glad you gave me the opportunity to be here, Jimmy. I'm happy we got a chance to talk again. Really happy that we got to see each other, and happy we got to spend a little time at Psy Games. Hopefully again next year, huh?
Yeah, absolutely. And I would like to come by the Rhine Institute and check stuff. I say Institute Research Center and come by and say hello, and maybe you guys can plug me in and see if I glow.
Put you in the dark and see if you're glowing. Yeah.
see if I fade to black. I said it. John, thank you so much. Enjoy the rest of your evening, and I look forward to our next conversation, my friend.
Thank you, Jimmy. It's good to be here. Good night.
Have a good night. Thank you so much. John Kruth, everybody. Now, we've got all the links for the Rhine below. So you can go and do your deep dive and go and check out everything that they do over there. With this, this will wrap this week on Fade to Black. Tomorrow night, we're off air. I am attending a Halloween party, and I'm going to go and do that. So everybody just have a great, safe, fun, and amazing weekend, and I'll see you right back here on Monday. All right. But for now, all I've got is Go Beckley Teppy. Fade to Black is produced by Hilton J. Palm, Renee Newman, and Michelle Freed. Special thanks to Bill, John, Dex, Jessica, Dennis, and Kevin. Webmaster is Drew the Geek. Music by Doug Aldrich. Intro, Space Boy. Fade to Black is produced by KJCR for the Game Changer Network. This broadcast is owned and copyrighted 2024 by Fade to Black and the Game Changer Network, Inc. It cannot be rebroadcast, downloaded, copied, or used anywhere in the known universe without written permission from Fade to Black or the Game Changer Network. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. Go Beckley Teppy.